Staff Sergeant Matthew Carter, 32, walked through the sliding doors of the Austin Bergstrom International Airport, still carrying the sand-dusted backpack he'd taken to Afghanistan. His body was tired, but his heart was warm. He was home. Home to his 8-year-old daughter Lily, whom he hadn't hugged in 22 months. Home to his mother, Marie, who had spent every night praying he would return safe. But before he could even take 5 steps, it began. At the TSA checkpoint stood Officer Greg Simmons, mid-40s, irritated by everything, especially soldiers. Beside him was Officer Danielle Reed, younger, trying to impress her senior with forced confidence. Matthew placed his bag on the conveyor belt, removed his boots, and smiled politely. But Greg smirked, loudly. "Look at this guy," Greg scoffed. "Always think they deserve special treatment." Danielle laughed. "Bet he's just showing off the uniform." Their voices weren't whispers. People turned. The soldier froze. Matthew tried to keep calm. "I'm just trying to get home to my daughter," he said quietly. Greg rolled his eyes. "Sure you are. Step aside." Random screening. Matthew stepped aside, and the humiliation began. Greg dumped out his backpack roughly, scattering sand, socks, a worn-out photo of Lily, and folded letters Matthew had received overseas. The crowd was watching. Gasps. Whispers. Then Greg said the sentence that stabbed the deepest. "Look at all this junk. What kind of soldier can't even pack right?" Danielle laughed again. Matthew swallowed hard. 2 years fighting for his country, and this was the welcome home? At the same time, Judge Olivia Hartman, 50, respected and sharp-eyed, stood 2 lanes away. She wasn't in her courtroom, but injustice never failed to find her. She watched the entire scene. Silently. Angrily. When Greg aggressively searched Matthew's belongings, Judge Hartman stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" Greg smirked, shrugging. "No problem, ma'am. Just another soldier wanting attention." That was it. That one line lit a fire inside the judge's heart. She took Matthew aside gently. "Son, gather your things. You're coming with me." Matthew looked confused. Greg smirked, he assumed the judge was agreeing with him. He had no idea. She wasn't taking Matthew for questioning. She was taking him to justice. 3 weeks later. Security officers Greg Simmons and Danielle Reed were ordered to appear in court. The courtroom was full. Journalists. Families. Veterans. Even Matthew's daughter Lily sat in the front row, holding her dad's hand tightly. Judge Hartman entered with calm authority. But her eyes burned. She played the airport surveillance footage on the screen. Every laugh. Every insult. Every humiliating second. The courtroom went silent. Greg's face lost all color. Danielle looked down at her hands, shaking. When the video ended, Judge Hartman leaned forward. "This man risked his life so you two could stand here safely," she said. Her voice cracked with emotion. "And you mocked him? Publicly? Proudly?" Greg whispered, "We were joking." "Jokes end where dignity begins," the judge replied sharply. "You stripped a soldier's dignity in front of a crowd, on the day he returned to his child." Danielle wiped her tears. Greg tried not to cry, but failed. The judge turned to Matthew. "Sergeant Carter, would you like to speak?" Matthew stood slowly. He wasn't angry. Not anymore. He was tired. "Ma'am. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to go home. I serve because I love my country. I serve so people can feel safe, even people like them." Lily squeezed his hand. The judge closed her eyes, emotional. Judge Hartman issued a powerful sentence, not prison, but something deeper. Mandatory public apology to Matthew and all veterans. 1-year volunteer service at the local VA hospital. Suspension from TSA for 90 days and mandatory retraining. Greg cried. Danielle cried even harder. Matthew didn't cry. He simply exhaled. Relieved. Respected. Seen. Weeks later, Greg and Danielle worked at the VA hospital. They met soldiers without legs. Without eyesight. Without families. They finally understood. One day, Greg approached Matthew there. "We were wrong," he said quietly. "I'm truly sorry." Matthew nodded. No anger. Just hope. Because sometimes, people don't need punishment. They need perspective.